this intersection between the way proposals have been written for so many years. The sales team goes out there, writes something, sends to client's not perfect, client reacts, there's iterations, and there's the process there that I think we now have all of this technology that enables recording of calls. There's all of this context that goes into that proposal, and everything in healthcare is bespoke. There's no one size fits all proposal. So being able to streamline that approach, I think, is something that I would love to fix. And I also think it would help our clients immensely because the proposals that they would receive are much more tailored to their specific business.
Yeah.
And that way we just remove some of the ambiguity of this thing doesn't quite fit. And that's a place that I think is ultimately where the rubber meets the road between a lot of conversations and, hey, let's go actually do this.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Business of Learning podcast. My name is Joao Camargo, and my guest here today is Kirk Goodman, who is the commercial leader at Radiant Graph. Kirk, thank you so much for being here today. I'm super, super excited to have this conversation, and welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, of course. Likewise. Thanks for having me. This will be fun.
Yeah, I always love to start these conversations with the guests just sharing a little bit more about themselves, a little bit more about the role, the company that they work in. And I like framing it in this way. What's the big problem you guys solve? So tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, for sure. So I can do a quick introduction of myself, but maybe the big problem that we are solving is that nobody engages with their healthcare, and all of the health plan messages that people get today are just kind of thrown in the trash or ignored. And it's costing the system huge, huge amounts of money. And we've spent decades trying to solve this problem. And now there is an opportunity to actually solve it in a more holistic way. And that's what Radiant Graph is. We could talk more about that. In terms of myself, I have been in the health tech world for the last decade or so. I've spent a bunch of time building out the commercial function at different healthcare organizations. And prior to that was trained as an engineer and a management consultant and a Midwest guy, but have spent about a decade in Silicon Valley backed companies and all trying to help different healthcare organizations in different ways.
Yeah, awesome. Very, very cool. And let's dive straight into it. I think a big pattern that has reoccurred in a lot of my conversations is that there is so much data out there. There's an overwhelm of data. And that's not the problem. The problem is knowing what to do with it and using it in the right ways and leveraging those things to, one, help the company grow, but number two, then helping the people that you actually work with, the clients that you have, the partners, whatever that might be. So talk to me a little bit more about that. How are you guys helping your customers, your clients? Talk to me a little bit more about those as well, and share with everyone how that process works.
Yeah, that is the foundation of what we do. Is I think healthcare is in this unique position where if you think about a health plan, they have the most sensitive personal data around all of us. And today, all the systems are built for security and handling that information in the right sensitive ways. And what AI presents this opportunity for is how can you actually utilize that data to create more personalized experiences for every single member? And that's what Radiant Graph enables, is basically enabling you to safely and securely take this underlying asset that is all of the information you know about your members over many, many years and turn that into personalized content and engagement with each individual member. So you can think of us as the ability to go from data all the way through content in a highly compliant and personalized way that is built to solve health plans' actual problems versus just a kind of horizontal personalization solution. We are coming to market to help our health plan partners effectively translate this data into content, but in a way that solves real problems for them. So you could think about problems from closing gaps in care to problems to how do you more effectively drive member onboarding? How do you help members as they turn 65? How do you think about really all the different solutions in a health plan that they're doing relatively manually today because the data is stored and not really accessed by the experience teams, the marketing teams, the communication teams, and we solve that problem for our partners.
Awesome, very, very cool. And I'd love to hear if your guys' clients, they have any specific use cases that they find really, really valuable. It sounds, of course, there's a ton of value at many levels there, but is there any specific thing that they're always like, oh, this is the thing that we absolutely love that you guys do, that if it was only just this and not all the other things that you guys do, would be more than happy with it as well? Anything like that?
Yeah, I think it's always super helpful to go into specifics. So one is getting people enrolled in the clinical programs that are ROI proven. So For example, behavioral health programs, substance use disorder programs, diabetes programs, all MSK programs, all these different clinical programs. And we've had this proliferation of digital health programs over many years. And our health plan partners want people to actually use these and want to get value out of them, but making them aware of them is challenging. So how do you speak to Kirk differently than every other member based on what you know about my history to get me to take
Yeah.
action for that specific program? So that's one
Mhm.
class of problems that we really focus on. I think
Mhm.
another interesting one to think about is how do we enable people to close gaps in care? So thinking about Medicare, Medicaid populations where you have kind of a lot of different channels to reach these folks, and how do you pick the right channel, the right message, and really get to that person to get them to take action. And we have a set of AI voice technologies that enable you to do that at scale. So thinking about matching, even accents. So people with a Southern drawl, how do you speak to them in that language? How do you speak to somebody in a way that's going to get them to take action? And moving kind of the marketing heuristics of, I think this might work,
Yeah.
to a machine learning driven approach to say, we've seen this work in the population in the past for groups that look like this. How do we
Yeah.
take that, continue to test, iterate, and improve? So those are two examples, kind of clinical programs, gaps in care, but then you can also think about expanding that to a number of different applications. So all these rules through the big beautiful bill for Medicaid plans around redetermination. How do you get people to take action there? As you think about Medicare populations, as folks are aging into Medicare, how do you help them make the right decisions? And then once they're in the plan, how do you make sure that they're satisfied and taking advantage of all the things that the plan has to offer?
That's actually really cool. Yeah, and it's interesting you're mentioning that. I guess sorry, go ahead, finish your thought there.
No, that's super helpful. Jump in.
No, yeah, I was gonna say it's really interesting to hear the internal perspective in a lot of that clarity side of things. Like, here is how you're able to leverage all these things in very specific ways, but also personalized ways. Because, correct me if you disagree with this, oftentimes there's a lot of value that companies can deliver, but the messaging, or I'll call it the educational part of what that value is, just goes straight over people's head, and they like never speak about it again, or they're never aware of it. So sometimes they don't take action, or even when they do take action, there's not a lot that they truly leverage from the tools, the software, the service, whatever that might be. So it's really cool that internally you guys are, it sounds to me like from the get-go, you're focusing on those things to be able to start on the right foot from the get-go and leverage all these things, all these informations, and the data that you're able to gather in the right way from the get-go without any distrust or without any lack of clarity.
Yeah, I think a huge part of the value proposition we bring to our clients is wherever you are at today, we can jump in and accelerate what you are doing. So most organizations have been trying to solve this problem for many years. So it's not as if they're coming from it as a cold start. And it's more
Yeah.
about how can we come in as a solutions partner and accelerate what they have been doing and apply the latest AI technologies to enable them to achieve their goals. The goals remain relatively the same, like gaps in care. Any listening to this, you've heard that a million times. Now, how do we apply this new technology shift to actually solve that kind of constant problem within healthcare? And
Amazing.
you think that the healthcare industry is one that will benefit by far the most from AI, just because it's 20% US GDP. There's so much low hanging fruit. And it's really about how do you get started and not aiming for perfection from day one, but aiming for progress, and then making sure that you're doing it in a very safe and compliant way, given the sensitivity around these communications.
100%. Amazing. I would love to shift our conversation here slightly, Kirk, into Radiant Graph itself and what you guys have going on. And I guess alongside that same topic, sorry, of educating the customer and the prospects and the value that you guys provide, talk to me a little bit more about that side of things. Because I think oftentimes as leaders of companies, we can be looked at from the outside and people say, hey, yeah, this is all just sunshines and rainbows. Business is great. But then we're like, oh, we know how many challenges we actually have to face internally to get through to the impact and the growth that we're looking for. So when, as a commercial leader, you're looking at all these things, talk to me about some of those challenges that you guys face on a day-to-day level.
Yeah, the biggest challenge that we and our partners face is that the systems that house all their member data, it's a multi-cloud architecture. There's often silos of information. It's sparse, messy, it's incomplete. There's kind of this consistent member 360 ongoing forever journey. And a lot of those things prevent our partners from saying, let's take action to do this concrete thing. So the way that we help those partners solve that problem is we've gone ahead and pre-integrated with all those cloud solutions. We have the highest insurance requirements. We have all the SOC 2 Type 2, high trust. We've taken all of kind of the typical restrictions that stop technology partners from being able to have success in healthcare. We've taken those off the table. And we've already partnered with large national health plans, Blues plans, and we've been able to overcome those typical objections that come into sharing data with any third-party organization. We're built for that kind of safety, compliance, and trust, and we're able to overcome some of those objectives. But the reality is it just takes time. So we have to be able to go through the right security assessments. We have to have the right insurance in place. We have to have the right kind of policies and procedures in place to be able to actually safely and securely access our customers' sensitive healthcare data, and then make sure that we're using that in an effective way that ensures the trust of the members.
Yeah, that's a million percent. That's so important. And that sounds like it's more so when customers are you guys are already working together. There is that agreement moving forward. It's just a matter of just really understanding how to make this in the most efficient but also safe way possible. How about on the other side of that conversation where that decision hasn't been made yet? Maybe it's the creating the opportunities or having those initial talks to really show what you guys are capable of and how that adds value to a lot of your prospects.
A key component of this is show, don't tell. I think a lot of people have said personalization over the years. So what we tend to do with our clients is we go through a pretty intense solution process to be able to show exactly how we could help them, show realistic demos of what it would look like. And then oftentimes we'll go through a design phase with our partners as well to show them, here's exactly what this will look like prior to fully handing over the data and letting the systems run. So it's really a matter of how do you build trust in that pre-sales process and make sure that we are working with the right people and we are solving the right problems. And that is the nature of all kind of enterprise sales, is it's about optimally solving problems with your partners versus by the widget.
That's so interesting. Do you find that that word keeps coming up in so many of these conversations? Trust, trust, trust. Do you find that building that trust there can be like some potholes in the road to get to that point, or maybe some hesitation to listen or to adapt some of these things from your guys' prospects?
Yeah, I think a big part of that is the team that you build and how you can build trust quickly. So one of the core tenets of how we've built our sales team is everybody has 10 plus years of experience working with health plans. There isn't the need to educate us on the inner workings of your business. Yeah, there will always be intricacies, but the realities of inside Aetna, Blue Shield, Molina, all these different organizations, there are a lot of similarities. And by building the right team that understands the insurance plans very, very well, you can get to trust faster. Now, how do you build trust? It's making commitments, following through on those commitments. Trust isn't something that's instantaneously built, but it's built through kind of a process and also through your reputation. So it's the team that we build, and then it's the process that we run. And that ultimately is what builds to trust over time.
Gotcha. There's a question that I've often asked in the podcast for almost every single guest, and I think it would actually be the perfect question to ask you as well. So I'll go ahead with it, and I might do a little tweak from the way that I usually ask, which is this. Let's say we're in a magical world and you have a magic wand, Kirk, and you can wave this phenomenal wand to just solve one challenge in the business internally when you're looking at the growth goals, revenue goals, client acquisition goals, whatever that might be on the back end. Moving away from the million priorities that you likely have on the day-to-day and the fires that have to be put out. Not all of them, just one of them. One thing that gets solved that will allow all that growth to come. And I think a good way of even just adding on to that as a supplementary of it is when you're looking at those, what's that biggest obstacle, that biggest hurdle to achieve that growth, that revenue, client, whatever that might be that you guys are looking for? What's the one thing?
Yeah, I think if I could wave a magic wand, I think what I would love to do is to get faster proposals out there. I think there is this ability to go from conversation to discovery into proposal. And if I could solve that, well, the way I would love to solve that is to move to like hyper personalized proposals. And I think a lot of this can be done today using AI. And we're starting to drive some of this in the sales process. But if I could accelerate ahead 6 months, I would definitely focus on that. So we're having a lot of great conversations at the top of the funnel. We're starting to get into the solution process. But when you actually sit down to write that proposal, it ends up being quite time consuming. The devil's in on that one. And I think there's a lot of solutions that could go there that could help here.
And I just want to clarify what you mean here to make sure I understand it correctly as well. Do you mean that in the actual execution of that document and making sure it's as accurate and as possible for the conversation that the team has had during that discovery? Or do you mean just literally having that transfer over so the sales cycle is not so long? Because oftentimes we know, hey, yeah, let's book something for 6 months down the line. You're like, oh, no, let's not do that. Like, I can get you for next week.
The kind of the document, and it's this intersection between the way proposals have been written for so many years. The sales team goes out there, writes something, sends to client. It's not perfect. Client reacts. There's iterations, and there's the process there that I think we now have all of this technology that enables recording of calls. There's all of this context that goes into that proposal, and everything in healthcare is bespoke. There's no one size fits all proposal. So being able to streamline that approach, I think, is something that I'd love to fix. And I also think it would help our clients immensely because the proposals that they would receive are much more tailored to their specific business.
Yeah.
And that way we just remove some of the ambiguity of this thing doesn't quite fit. And that's a place that I think is ultimately where the rubber meets the road between a lot of conversations and, hey, let's go actually do this. This is what we're doing.
Yeah. Are we just having nice chats or like, is this going to happen? That's yeah. Awesome. Good stuff. I'd love to ask you one final question here as well, Kirk, which funnily enough is actually not a question from me. It's a question from our last guest to you, and they had absolutely no idea who you were.
Okay.
So here's the question. You ready for it?
Sure.
When you wake up in the morning, what is the thing that gets you really excited about going to work?
Oof. All right. Going to work. I'd say the first thing that gets me excited in the morning is when my 2 young children are screaming and saying, hey, let's go. And I think that's the thing that I start every day with now. I think it's a fantastic thing to start your day with. I would say that it gets me going for work is always the people. It's always the team that we've built here, and it is our clients. And that is ultimately the thing that drives me is it's those relationships more than anything. Being able to build the right culture, the right team, and the right client base is ultimately what makes you excited. Like we are all so driven by relationships, and that's what matters to me. So that's what will be going in the morning.
Yeah. Is there anything specific about the team? Like what about the team that really just gets that fire going within you and within the entire culture of the company?
There's something really unique about people that are willing to go work for a startup and attack such a challenging problem. And I think of the analogy often of kind of the pirate ship that's becoming a navy. And it's fun to go to work with a bunch of pirates in this stage as you're trying to figure out how do you actually scale this business. But pirates who have the mindset of we are building towards this much bigger vision. And I think there's something really energizing about working with people like that every day. So that's what gets me going. I think that, and then the kids get me out of bed, but ultimately I'm excited to dive in with the team every day.
Amazing. Ladies and gentlemen, Kirk Goodman, thank you so much for your time. It's been such an awesome conversation. Where should people go if they want to learn a little bit more about you, Kirk, or a little bit more about Rating Graph as well?
Yeah, you can find us online. I think LinkedIn and Rating Graph are great places, and you can read case studies. You can see what we can do, check out some demos, and we're all online there.
Amazing. I will leave as many links as I can down below here if you're listening to this and you want to check it out. And if you enjoyed this conversation, you want to hear more conversations like this, please also hit the subscribe button, and I will see you on the next episode. Kirk, thanks again for your time.
For sure.